The marble lobby smelled like lemon wax and cold air. Mop squeaked. A woman in a gray work smock moved with measured care, pushing a yellow bucket across the polished floor as if it were a quiet promise. No mess left behind, no trace of struggle. She was older, late 60s, maybe more, skin deep as roasted coffee, hair wrapped in a neat scarf. Her shoes were plain. Her posture was unbowed. And still, the first voice cut through her calm like a blade. "Hey, you, stop right there." The woman paused, not startled, just still. A man in a navy suit strode from the security desk, jaw tight, badge swinging from a lanyard. Behind him, two uniformed guards stood like doors that could shut. He pointed at her bucket. "You can't be in this area." "I'm cleaning," she said, voice soft. "They asked for the lobby." The suited man laughed once, sharp and small. They asked, "Who is they?" A few people waiting near the glass doors turned. A courier with a stack of boxes. A couple in matching workout gear. A young intern clutching a tote bag like it could shield her. The woman kept her hand on the mop handle. "My work order is for this floor," she said. "Work order," he repeated, as if tasting a lie. His eyes flicked to her face, to the scarf, to the wrinkles that held years like fine lines in a map. Then his gaze dropped, past her words, toward the bucket as if that was all she could ever be. "You need to go around back," he said. "Service entrance. This is the executive lobby." The woman looked at the soaring atrium, the sculpted metal art on the far wall, the company logo lit like a halo, Lumen Ridge Industries. "I'm in the right lobby," she replied. A hush thickened the air. The suited man's smile vanished. He said, louder now, "I'm the head of building operations. I'm telling you, you don't belong here." A woman near the doors lifted her phone. Another person followed. A whisper ran through the room like a spark searching for dry grass. "Is this real?" someone murmured. "Record it," a teen in a hoodie said, already filming. The woman's eyes met the suited man's, steady and level. "May I finish this section?" she asked. His face reddened, insulted by her calm. "No," he snapped. "You're refusing a direct instruction. That's a security violation." He nodded to the guards. "Escort her out." The guard stepped forward. One reached for the mop handle like it was contraband. The woman didn't pull back, didn't flinch. She simply loosened her grip and let the mop stand, perfectly upright, as if it had learned discipline from her hands. "I'm not causing trouble," she said. "I'm working." "Then work where you're supposed to," the man barked. "You people always test limits." The words landed with a dull, brutal thud. A few bystanders winced. One man shifted, uneasy. The intern's mouth fell open. The woman's face didn't change, but something in the room did, like the temperature dropped a degree. "Sir," she said, "watch your mouth." The suited man scoffed. "Oh, now you're giving me orders." He turned to the crowd, performing. "Everyone, please step back. We have an unauthorized person in a restricted area." The teen filming zoomed in. "Yo, this is crazy," he muttered to his stream. "They trying to kick out an old lady for mopping." A notification chime pinged from someone's phone. Then another. The live stream link started moving like a current. The guard nearest her said, "We need you to come with us." The woman glanced toward the elevator bank reserved for senior leadership. Brushed steel, keycard access, a silent promise of power. Then she looked back at the man in the suit. "Before you touch me," she said, calm as dusk, "call your CEO." The suited man blinked, then laughed so hard it sounded forced. "Call the CEO," he said. "For you." He leaned in, voice low, cruel. "Lady, you're about to be trespassed. You're lucky I don't have you in cuffs." The crowd tightened. Cameras rose higher. The intern swallowed hard. The woman reached into her smock pocket. Not for a weapon, not for a badge, for a folded business card. She held it out, still, like an offering. The suited man didn't take it. "Last warning," he said, and lifted his radio. "Unit 3, get me police on standby. Possible aggressive subject." Aggressive. The word curled around her like smoke, trying to choke her name out of the air. The woman's gaze stayed steady. "Go ahead," she said. Do what you think is right. And as the guards closed in, as the live stream count climbed, as the glass doors reflected a dozen anxious faces, the woman's phone, old, scuffed, quiet, buzzed once in her pocket. A single vibration. A signal. Her eyes softened, just for a breath. Then she lifted her chin. Because in minutes, the whole building would learn who had been mopping their floors, and who had been sweeping their dignity away. Hands where I can see them, the man said, as if she had stolen more than time. She set both hands on the mop handle, palms open. A woman near the coffee kiosk whispered, "She's just cleaning." The man ignored her. He spoke to the guards as if the older woman were a package. "Check her badge," he ordered. "Make sure it's not fake." The guard reached toward her chest where the plastic badge hung. His fingers hovered, uncertain, then brushed the badge. It read, "M. Grant, Temp Services." The man snorted. "Temp," he said, loud enough for the room. "Of course." The badge swayed. The teen filming shifted his phone to frame them together. The contrast sharp. Press suit versus work smock, swagger versus stillness. He read the comments out loud, half stunned, half angry. "This is giving 1950, he said. "Yeah, it is." The man snapped. "Stop narrating. Turn it off." The teen lifted his chin. "Nah, folks need to see this." The man stepped toward him, but the crowd tightened like a protective ring, strangers suddenly united by a shared disgust. A courier, tall and tired-eyed, moved to stand between the man and the teen. "Back off," the courier said. "You got your guards. You don't need to bully kids too." The man glared. "You're interfering with security." The courier shrugged. "Then arrest me too." They got a few nervous laughs, but the laughs carried steel. The man's radio crackled again. "Unit 3 to Ops. Police en route." The man clicked the radio off with a flourish, like a gavel. "There," he said. "Now we're doing it the hard way." He pointed at the bucket. "You can leave with dignity," he said, dripping irony, "or you can leave in handcuffs." The older woman looked down at the bucket, then up again. "Dignity isn't something you hand out," she said. "It's something you can't take." That sentence hit the room like a sudden gust. Even one of the guards blinked. The man scoffed, but his voice wavered. "Oh, so now you're a philosopher." Her mouth curved, the smallest hint of humor. "No," she said. "I'm someone who has had to practice being calm while folks try to turn me into a problem." The intern, Jada, took a step forward, heart hammering in her throat. "She's not the problem," Jada said, louder now. "You are." The man whipped around. "Excuse me." Jada's hand shook, but her eyes stayed up. "You're abusing your role." The man's laugh was brittle. "What's your name?" Jada hesitated. The older woman spoke for her. "Her name doesn't change the truth." The man's smile fell away. "You don't get to protect her." The older woman replied, calm as stone. "Watch me." And that was when the lobby doors slid open and a cold gust rushed in, along with 3 suited executives heading to a morning meeting. They saw the crowd, the phones, the guards. One executive, a white man with a gold pin on his lapel, frowned. "What's going on?" he asked. The man turned fast, eager for backup. "An unauthorized worker," he said. "She wandered into the executive lobby. We're removing her." The executive glanced at the older woman and barely slowed. "Fine," he said. "Just get it handled. We're late." He walked on. That casual dismissal drew a new kind of anger from the crowd. Not heat, but grief. As if people had just watched indifference walk by wearing polished shoes. The older woman watched the executive vanish into the private elevator. Then she looked at the man again, and her voice dropped. "That," she said, "is what you think leadership looks like." The man bristled. "Don't lecture me." She nodded once, as if filing the moment away for later. "Then don't act like a lesson," she replied. Her phone buzzed again, 2 vibrations this time, urgent. Help was close. The air thickened with the sense, undeniable now, that the story everyone thought they knew was about to flip. Dawn in the city came like a thin ribbon of light dragged across rooftops. She rose before it, as she always had. Her apartment was modest, a small kitchen, framed photos on the wall, a bookshelf holding worn biographies and ledgers. In one picture, a younger version of her stood beside a factory line, hair natural, smile bright, hands on hips. In another, she held a child on her hip while signing paperwork with the other hand. Her name was Maris Grant. On paper, she was the chief executive officer of Lumen Ridge Industries, the company whose logo now glowed over the lobby where she would be judged by a mop and a scarf. On paper, she was a billionaire, a boardroom force, a headline name. In her heart, she was the granddaughter of a woman who cleaned courthouse steps in the heat, humming hymns under her breath so nobody could hear her pride break. Her grandmother used to say, "There's two kinds of dirt, baby. The kind on the floor, and the kind in folks' minds. One is easy to scrub." Maris had never forgotten that. Maris' first job was not glamorous. She was 16, wiping tables at a diner off Route 9, the kind of place where coffee was always hot and respect was not. One afternoon, a man left a coin on the table and said, "That should cover your kind." Maris took the coin, walked outside, caught up to him in the parking lot. "Sir," she said, voice shaking, "you forgot something." He turned, annoyed. "What?" Maris placed the coin in his palm and closed his fingers around it. "Your manners," she said. He stared, stunned that a girl in an apron had spoken like a person. Her manager fired her that night. Her mother cried, scared. "Why couldn't you just keep your head down?" Maris hugged her mother and said, "Because I want to lift it up." Years later, at college, a professor told her she was too ambitious for her background. Maris smiled and asked, "What background is that?" He didn't answer. In graduate school, she studied energy systems by day and worked janitorial shifts by night to pay tuition. Those nights shaped her, not just the labor, the way people looked through her, the way bosses spoke about headcount, like human beings were numbers to erase. One night, she found an older man asleep in a stairwell, a maintenance worker who had been working double shifts. She placed her jacket over him, then finished his route so he wouldn't be written up. He woke at dawn to find his work done and his body warm. He wept, quiet, in the empty corridor. "Why'd you do that?" he asked. Maris said, "Because nobody should be punished for being tired." That worker, Mr. Harris, became one of her first supporters when she launched her tiny engineering startup years later. He invested not money, he didn't have it, but time, calling in favors, fixing broken equipment, guarding her office from thieves. He once told her, "A company is only as good as how it treats the folks who show up when nobody claps." Maris carried that line like a compass. The board had been talking. They always talked. Culture surveys, inclusion metrics, complaints that disappeared before they reached HR. A pattern of misunderstandings that always seemed to find the same targets. Maris read the reports in the quiet hours, alone at her kitchen table, tea cooling beside her. Names blurred into statistics, but the pain behind them stayed sharp. So she made a plan. Not a stunt, not a PR trick, a test. She called her chief of staff, a woman named Sloan who had seen Maris walk into hostile rooms and leave with contracts signed and egos humbled. "I want to see the company with my own eyes," Maris said. Sloan hesitated. "You mean site visits?" "I mean invisibility," Maris replied. "I want to be treated the way people treat the folks they think don't matter." Silence on the line. Then Sloan said, carefully, "That's dangerous." Maris smiled, small and tired. "So is ignorance." They arranged it. A simple uniform from the contracted cleaning vendor. A temporary badge with a generic name. A work order printed on thin paper. No entourage. No cameras on Maris' side. Only the truth. Before she left her apartment, Maris stood by the mirror. She tied her scarf, smoothed the smock, looked at herself as if she were meeting a stranger. Under the fabric, beneath the plainness, her body held decades of labor, not just boardrooms, but night shifts, factory inspections, years when she had been a single mother with a baby asleep in a laundry basket beside her as she drafted proposals. She remembered the first time she walked into an investor meeting in 1994, a cramped office with stale coffee smell, where the men looked past her to ask who she was with. "I'm with the future," she had said then, and she built it anyway. Lumen Ridge started as a small engineering firm with a big idea, smart energy systems that could cut waste and lower costs for schools and hospitals. Maris poured her life into it. She ate rejection like dry bread. She cried in bathrooms so her staff wouldn't see. She held hands with dying mentors and promised to keep going. And she had. Now, after a quarter century, she wondered what her company had become when her name wasn't in the room. She slipped her phone into her pocket and set a single contact as a shortcut. Sloan. One tap, and help would come. She didn't want help. She wanted clarity. On the train downtown, she watched commuters stare at their screens. She watched a man in a suit take up 2 seats. She watched a woman in scrubs rub sleep from her eyes. Nobody saw Maris Grant, CEO. They saw an older black woman in a work smock, hands folded around a bucket handle. And that, she realized, was the point. When she arrived at Lumenridge Tower, the sky was still pale. The lobby was quiet. The day crew hadn't arrived yet. A young receptionist barely glanced up. "Service entrance is around back," she said. "Bought." Maris thanked her and walked around without protest, sensing the sting of a familiar pattern. Doors that moved for some people and stayed shut for others. She entered through a corridor that smelled of bleach and metal. A supervisor handed her a clipboard without looking at her face. "Lobby and executive floor," the supervisor said. "Don't touch anything expensive. And don't talk to anyone." Maris nodded. She had spent her life being told not to take up space. She had spent her life taking it anyway. As she pushed the bucket into the main lobby, she noticed details. The art, the security desk, the way power sat in the room like a heavy coat. She also noticed the small things, a security guard calling a courier buddy, while calling the older woman "Hey you." An intern smiling at the executive assistant but stepping around Maris as if she were a pillar. She kept moving, kept cleaning, kept listening. She wasn't hunting villains. She was measuring a system. And systems, she knew, always showed their truth under pressure. By mid-morning, the lobby had filled. And the head of building operations, a man named Trent Voss, had entered with his own kind of swagger, barking into his phone about keeping the image clean. Maris watched him from the corner of her eye as she wiped fingerprints off a glass column. He didn't see her. Not really. Then she crossed into the executive lobby area to finish a strip of floor that was still tacky from last night's polish. And Trent decided she had crossed into his world. The guard's hand closed around the bucket handle. He said again, quieter now. "Let's go." Maris raised her palm, not in defiance, but in pause. "Please," she said, "don't pull. It can spill." Trent Voss rolled his eyes. "Stop pretending you care about the floor," he snapped. "You're stalling." The team filming turned toward the crowd. "Chat, they're about to drag her out," he said. "Look at this." Numbers floated on his screen like rising smoke. Viewers joining, comments firing. "Who is she? This is racist, let her clean," called the CEO. Trent heard the last part and scoffed. "You folks and your little cameras," he said, louder, making sure he was heard. "This is private property. Turn that off." A woman in workout gear raised her phone higher. "It's a public lobby," she said, "and you're embarrassing yourself." Trent snapped his fingers at a guard. "Get they phones out of my face." The second guard stepped toward the bystanders. The crowd murmured, anger mixing with fear. People backed up but kept filming, arms extended, screens glowing. Maris remained still, eyes on Trent. "Your name is Trent," she said, as if reading it off a sign only she could see. He stiffened. "Who told you my name?" "The way you talk," she replied. "The way you act. It carries." A ripple ran through the crowd. Someone laughed nervously. Trent's cheeks flushed deeper. "Don't get smart," he hissed. "You're already in trouble." He tapped his radio again. "Police ETA." A crackle answered. 5 to 7 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes. A small eternity when dignity is on the line. The intern in the corner, still clutching her tote, whispered, "This is wrong." Her voice shook, but she didn't move. Maris turned her head slightly and met the intern's eyes. "It's okay," Maris said, gentle. The intern swallowed. "No, it's not." Trent heard and pounced on that weakness like it was proof. "See," he said, gesturing at the intern. Even your own people know you're in the wrong place. Maris' brow tightened, just a fraction. My own people? She asked. Trent lifted his hands as if innocent. Don't twist my words. The teen filming let out a low whistle. Oof, he muttered. He said that out loud. Comments exploded. Say it again, 4HR, somebody tag Lumenridge, this man needs fired. Someone in the crowd shouted, What's your name, sir? Trent straightened, smiling the smile of a man used to control. I don't have to answer you, he said. I'm responsible for this building, and I'm handling a trespasser. A man near the doors said, She's not doing anything. Trent snapped his gaze toward him. Do you work here? No. Then mind your business. The guard at Maris' side said, You need to come now. Maris looked at him, not angry, just sad. Son, she said quietly, do you know what you're doing? The guard's jaw flexed. He looked away. Trent stepped closer, voice rising. You're manipulating my staff, he said. I've seen this before. You play calm, you play sweet, and then you file some complaint and act like a victim. Maris breathed in, slow. Across the lobby, the company logo glowed. Lumenridge. Light on a ridge. A name meant to mean hope. Trent's voice cut through it. I'm done, he said. Hands on her arms. Now. Two guards moved in. The crowd surged forward, a wave of phones and outrage. Don't touch her. This is harassment. Let her go. Trent shouted over them. Back up, or we clear the lobby. A third guard appeared near the doors, positioning himself like a barricade. The livestream count jumped again, climbing into the thousands. Maris felt her phone buzz again. 2 vibrations this time. Urgent. Sloan. Help was close. Maris looked at Trent one last time. I asked you to call your CEO, she said. Trent laughed, wild now. I'm the authority here, he said. Not some imaginary savior you think you can summon. Maris nodded, almost as if she agreed. Then she spoke a sentence that landed like a match in dry leaves. All right, she said. Then call your board chair. Trent froze. The crowd quieted, a sudden dip in noise, as if the room itself leaned in. The guard's hand loosened on the bucket. Trent's eyes narrowed. How do you know we have a board chair? Maris' gaze didn't waver. Because I hired him, she said. And in that moment, the security desk phone rang. The ring echoed across the marble like a bell in a courtroom. Trent stayed at the phone. The receptionist, wide-eyed now, picked it up with shaking fingers. Lumenridge lobby, she said. Yes, yes, one moment. Her eyes flicked to Trent, then to Maris, then back to Trent. It's for you, she whispered. Trent snatched the receiver. What? He snapped into it. Who is this? His face shifted as he listened. The swagger drained. The color left his cheeks. No, that's not, he began. A pause. Then, softer, yes, sir. He swallowed. Sweat beaded at his hairline. Yes, sir. I understand. He hung up slowly, as if gravity had doubled. The crowd held its breath. The teen filming whispered, Oh, what just happened? Maris didn't move. The elevator bang chimed. The executive elevator, keycard only, opened. Out stepped Sloan, sharp in a black blazer, followed by 2 people Maris recognized by the way they walked. Corporate counsel, and a head of HR. Behind them, a man with silver hair and a calm, stern face. The board chair entered the lobby like a storm contained in a suit. He didn't look at Trent first. He went straight to Maris. And he stopped. Silence dropped so hard you could hear shoe scuff. The board chair lowered his head. Good morning, Maris, he said, voice clear, respectful, unmistakable. The lobby didn't just go quiet. It went numb. Phone stayed raised, but hands shook. Trent's mouth opened. No sound came out. Sloan stepped beside Maris and placed a gentle hand on her elbow. Are you hurt? Sloan asked. Maris shook her head once. I'm fine. The HR head, eyes glassy, looked at Trent as if seeing him for the first time. Trent found his voice in a ragged burst. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered. She didn't identify herself. Maris turned to him slowly. I did, she said. You just didn't hear me. The board chair's gaze cut to Trent, cold and exact. "Trent Voss," he said. "Step away." Trent's hands lifted, palms out. "So, I was protecting the executive area. We have protocols." She was in a cleaning uniform. Counsel spoke, clipped, "Which is not a crime." Trent's eyes darted to the guards, to the crowd, to the phones. The team filming said, "Louder now. Chat. That's the CEO. That's the CEO." A gasp surged. Someone whispered, "No way." Another person said, "Oh my God." The live stream exploded. The board chair faced the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you are witnessing a serious breach of company conduct. Please continue recording. Transparency will matter." A murmur of shock and approval ran through the room. Maris looked around at the faces, some guilty, some stunned, some angry on her behalf. She took a slow breath. Then she reached into her smart pocket again and unfolded the business card. She held it up. It read, "Maris Grant, Chief Executive Officer." Trent stated it like it was a weapon. Maris' voice was calm, but it carried. "I was asked," she said, "to learn how we treat the people who keep this place running." Her eyes moved from Trent to the guards to the bystanders. "I learned." No one spoke. Even the A felt ashamed. The police arrived to a lobby that had already changed. They stepped in, hands near their belts, eyes scanning for a threat that wasn't there. The board chair met them halfway. "No arrest," he said. "We called you under false pretenses. We'll be filing a report on that misuse." The officers looked at Trent, then at Maris, then at the cameras, and their postures softened into something like caution. Maris nodded politely at them. "Thank you for coming." They left as quickly as they could. Trent stood frozen, caught between humiliation and denial. Sloan spoke quietly to Maris. "The stream is everywhere." Maris glanced at the teen's phone, the scrolling comments, the furious captions. Within an hour, the video would be on every platform. Within a day, it would be on news channels. Within a week, it would be a case study. But consequences weren't content to stay online. They walked into offices, into homes, into bank accounts, into sleep. Maris turned to the guards. "You are following instructions," she said. "But you also have agency." The younger guard's eyes filled. "I didn't know." Maris nodded. "That's part of the problem." She looked at the HR head. "I want a full review," Maris said. "Not a memo, not a training slide. A real review. Every complaint, every pattern, every settlement hidden behind silence." HR swallowed. "Yes." Counsel added, "We'll place an immediate hold on terminations and disciplinary actions pending review." Maris' gaze returned to Trent. He tried again, voice cracking. "Maris, Ms. Grant, I swear I didn't mean." Maris raised a hand, not to silence him, but to stop the spinning. 15 minutes, she said, almost to herself. "That's how long it took for you to decide who I was." Trent's throat bubbed. "I was trying to protect power," she finished. "Not people." The board chair spoke, firm. "Trent Voss, you are suspended effective immediately." Trent's eyes went wide. "You can't do that in front of everyone," the board chair asked. "Yes, because you did this in front of everyone." Sloan signaled to two security supervisors, different ones, older, steadier, who approached Trent. Trent backed up. "This is insane. I've worked here 8 years." Mary's voice softened, and that softness made it cut deeper. "And how many people have worked under you in fear?" she asked. Trent's eyes flicked toward the crowd, begging for someone to see him as human. But the crowd had already seen the human cost of his authority. News broke fast. By lunch, Lumen Ridge stock dipped as investors reacted to the viral footage and the company's initial statement. "We are investigating a serious incident involving discriminatory conduct." By evening, the board announced an independent third-party investigation and placed Trent and 3 managers under him on leave pending results. Employees began sending emails to HR by the hundreds. Stories poured out, some small, some devastating. A woman in facilities wrote about being called invisible. A disabled engineer wrote about accommodations promised and then mocked. A black analyst wrote about being mistaken for a temp for 2 years. Mary sat in her office late that night. Her real office now. Glass walls, city lights, and listened to the messages. She didn't cry for optics. She cried because she recognized the pain, and because she realized how long it had been ignored. 2 days later, the investigation found what Maris had feared. Trent's conduct wasn't a single bad moment. It was a pattern. Documented complaints minimized, witnesses pressured, staff moved instead of managers held accountable. 3 more leaders resigned before they could be removed. A lawsuit was filed by a former employee who had settled quietly years earlier. This time, the settlement clause was no longer a gag. Public backlash surged. Clients demanded answers. A hospital network paused its contract renewal. Maris faced cameras on the steps of the tower. She wore no scarf now. Her hair was silver and proud. She didn't smile. "We failed people," she said. "And failure has a cost." The next Monday, Maris stood in the main auditorium, facing thousands of employees in person and tens of thousands on a live stream. No hype music, no flashy slides. Just a woman at a podium, hands resting lightly on the wood, eyes steady. She waited until the room settled. Then she spoke. "When I was a girl," she began, "my grandmother scrubbed floors in buildings where she wasn't allowed to use the front door. She did her job with care. Not because she was treated with care, because she had care inside her." The room was quiet. People leaned forward. "I built this company with the idea that light matters," Maris continued. "Light reveals. Light warms. Light guides. But light can also blind you if you only shine it on the people you already respect." She paused, letting that land. "Last week, I walked into our lobby wearing a cleaning uniform," she said. "In 15 minutes, I was called a trespasser. In 15 minutes, someone decided my presence was a threat. In 15 minutes, power was used to humiliate instead of to protect." She looked across the crowd. "Some of you are shocked," she said. "Some of you are not shocked at all." A few heads bowed. Mary's voice stayed even. "I'm not here to ask you to feel sorry," she said. "Pity is cheap. I'm here to ask you to be awake." She tapped the podium lightly. "Dignity is not a perk," she said. "It is not something you grant when someone proves they are important. Dignity is the starting point. If you only give respect after you see a title, then you never respected the person. You respected the power." A murmur moved through the room. Not applause, recognition. Maris continued. "Bias isn't always loud," she said. "Sometimes it's a glance that slides past someone. A door you don't hold. A question you don't ask. A complaint you don't take seriously. A joke you laugh at because it makes the room easier for you." She inhaled. "Accountability isn't revenge," she said. "It's repair. It's the courage to say, we harmed people, and we will not hide behind policy to avoid the work of change." She raised her chin. "From today on," Maris said, "we will measure leadership by how it treats the least protected person in the room. Not the loudest, not the richest, not the one with the fanciest badge." Her eyes swept the front row where senior leaders sat stiffly. "And if you think kindness is weakness," she said, voice still calm, "then you have misunderstood strength your whole life." A beat of silence. Then, softly, "We can do better," she finished. "But only if we stop asking who deserves respect and start acting like everyone does." This time, the applause came, slow at first, then rolling, then standing. Not because she had won, because she had named what many had lived. Spring arrived with rain that washed the city clean in streaks. At Lumenridge, the changes were no longer slogans. They were systems. An independent ombuds office was created, reporting directly to the board. Not to HR. Anonymous reporting tools were audited and rebuilt so complaints couldn't be buried. Managers were retrained, yes, but also evaluated, with real consequences tied to culture metrics, not just profit. The cleaning staff, contracted workers who had long been treated as background, were offered pathways to direct employment, benefits, and advancement programs. Some took them, some didn't, but they were asked, for the first time, what they wanted. Maris visited the night shift without cameras. She brought coffee and listened. One woman, hands cracked from chemicals, said, "I never thought you'd come down here." Maris replied, "I've been here my whole life. Folks just didn't look." Outside the company, Trent Voss faced his own reckoning. After the investigation, he was terminated for cause. His name became a symbol online, the face of a corporate sickness. He tried to sue. The footage undercut him. He tried to apologize. It sounded like damage control. He disappeared from the headlines. But the shame did not disappear from his mirrors. Some months later, a letter arrived at Maris' office. Handwritten. No attorney letterhead. It was from Trent. He wrote about his father, a man who had taught him that authority meant never being questioned. He wrote about fear of losing control, fear of looking weak, fear of being seen as small. He wrote, "I didn't see you. I saw a threat. I'm sorry." Maris read it twice. Then she placed it in a folder marked, "Possible restoration." Not forgiveness granted. Not punishment extended. A doorway cracked open. Meanwhile, the intern from the lobby, the one who had whispered "this is wrong," was promoted into a new role in the ethics office. Her name was Jada, and she carried that moment like a compass. One afternoon, Jada stood with Maris in the lobby, now busy with spring light and new signage that read, in bold letters, "Respect is our standard. For everyone." Jada glanced at the polished floor and smiled faintly. "I still hear it," she admitted. His voice. Maris nodded. "We don't erase the past," she said. "We use it." Outside, a group of school kids toured the building as part of a community program Lumenridge funded. Students from neighborhoods that had never been invited into towers like this. A little boy stared up at the logo and asked, "You own this place?" Maris crouched to his level. "I take care of it," she said. He frowned, thinking. "Like a janitor?" he asked. "Innocent." Maris laughed. Warm, full, no bitterness. "Yes," she said. "Like that. Like someone who knows messes matter, and that cleaning is honest work." She stood and looked around the lobby. The guards at the desk, new training, new leadership, nodded to her respectfully, and they also nodded to the contracted staff pushing carts through the front door, because the policy had changed. No more service entrance for the people who kept the place alive. The building felt different. Not perfect, but awake. That night, Maris returned to her apartment. She hung her blazer on a chair, made tea, sat at her kitchen table where she had once read reports in silence. On the wall, her grandmother's photo watched her with stern love. Maris opened her notebook and wrote a single line, as she often did after hard days. Who do we become when no one important is watching? She thought of the lobby, the mop, the phones, the word aggressive, the way power had tried to make her small. She thought of the crowd that had chosen, in that moment, to witness. She thought of the guards who had hesitated, of the intern who had spoken, of the strangers who had filmed not for fame but for truth. And she wondered how many moments like that happen every day, unseen. How many times someone is measured by their uniform, their age, their skin, their job, before anyone hears their name. So here's the question for you, reader. If a person walked past you tomorrow, carrying a bucket, wearing a smock, moving quietly through the world, would you see a role? Or would you see a human? And if you saw the human, what would change in the way you speak, the way you judge, the way you hold power, even in the smallest moments?